Awesome. Thanks so much, Justin. Welcome everyone to class. You are enrolled in Team Lead 101, the basics of being a software development manager. Want to give a quick feel for what types of people are in the audience. So I'm going to ask Brent to go ahead and share the poll that I have prepared. You're going to see a poll jump up in front of you, and just answer this quick question just so I can get to know you guys a little bit better. While you're answering that, I've been a team lead now for about 2.5 years. I was motivated to prepare this talk because I feel like much of what I've experienced and learned in my 2.5 years could have been taught and learned much earlier, much faster than I experienced. My first introduction to management came in a fairly typical way. Our division was growing and wanted to create a new team to take on some focused work on an older project that needed some attention. And I was offered the team lead spot for my technical skills, detailed organization, and the energy I brought to the team. And it kicked off an interesting career journey for myself that took me back and forth between being a manager and being a developer again across at least half a dozen teams before really solidifying myself as a software development manager now. And I realized that I've always loved opening people's eyes to the possibilities that they never knew existed, and found that I actually had a knack for applying that love to opening eyes to how a team can work effectively. So here we are. Brent, you want to go ahead and share the results of that poll? Let's see. Oh, we got a healthy mix of everyone. We have some managers that have been around for a long time, some brand new ones. Grand majority of you seem to be considering management. You're not currently a manager, but kind of interested in thinking about it. And then there's 5 of you that said that you are not really interested in being a manager in the future, but here you are learning about this topic. Welcome to all of you. I hope that each of you can take at least a little bit of something from this talk. So we don't have too much time to spend today to talk on this big topic. What we're going to cover are the essential responsibilities of a team lead and answer the questions of why be a team lead and why they're important and what they do. I won't really have time to talk too much about the how to do it yet. That'll definitely be a talk for later after we establish some foundational principles first. I'm a big believer in the power that a team lead has in the entire company's perspective and scope. They represent the bridge between the strategies that come from your executive team and the execution of those strategies by the individual team members. And in order to be an effective team lead, you must first understand the differences between what is a manager and what is an individual contributor. When I say individual contributor, really all I'm talking about is somebody who does not have a managerial relationship with somebody else in the company. They are given tasks, whether large and complicated or small, to work on, and they are largely measured by anything they create that provides more value to clients. That is what an individual contributor is. A manager, however, is measured by something completely different. And this is where we're going to start learning our lessons here. This is actually a quote that I took from a guy named Andrew S. Grove. He was the founder of Intel, and wrote a great book. A manager is not measured on their own contributions, right? They can work on tasks, but that is not what actually is used to measure their performance compared to other managers. They are measured based on the output of their organization as an aggregate, as well as the output of the neighboring organizations that are under his influence. This is sort of like those cruel group projects from school, except your grade is entirely determined by the performance of just the rest of the group members and not on the contributions that you actually make to the project. So there's an interesting distinction there to keep in mind as you're thinking about the difference between working as an individual contributor and working as a manager. It's very focused on empowering and helping the team be successful at their output. Another way to think about the distinction between the two is to think about their respective promotional tracks and how they increase in their scope of responsibility at the company. Individual contributors are very project focused. In this hierarchy, if you're not familiar, this is the logo of a version control system called Git. And it's meant to represent an individual project on a specific team. When you first start on a team, you're largely going to be focused on just working in a single project, getting your feet wet, trying to understand the tooling of the teams, figuring out the software development lifecycle, all of those sorts of things, and getting familiar with it. As you increase in your skill and your tenure at the company, you'll naturally start to branch out into the other projects that the team owns. Every once in a while, you'll jump teams and focus on a completely different set of projects. But eventually, as you get promoted, you're increasing the scope of influence over the projects that are owned by multiple teams, either serving as a consultant over a range of all these projects, or perhaps you're a specialist for a certain kind of technology, and then you are sort of consulting across a large swath of projects that are using this technology that you're a specialist in. That's kind of the promotional track of individual contributors and what they're focused on. When we think about managers, managers are people focused, right? So oftentimes when you start out on a managerial track, you actually start as an individual contributor on the team, trying to figure out the basics of the team, what kind of work they're involved in, what good work versus bad work looks like, etc. Those sorts of things. But then as you start to grow to be more people focused and helping empower the team, you eventually end up with that promotion where you become the manager of multiple different people. And your job is to influence them and to help them grow and empower them to do their work successfully. Team leads will also occasionally jump to different teams, much like individual contributors do. But all of this helps to serve their ability to increase their scope of influence. And eventually, the promotional track of managers has to do with having a larger scope of influence across multiple on the people across multiple different teams. And you are asked to use the domain knowledge you pick up along the way, skills, networking, all sorts of things to help with that. So there's an important distinction there between managers and individual contributors. So I guess before I introduce that, so in preparation for this talk, I decided to scroll through a variety of job descriptions and responsibilities of managers, of especially software development managers, as well as I looked at a few books that I happen to be reading on the topic along the way. And I distilled all of these different line items of things that managers are responsible for, and was able to find that they fit quite nicely into three major categories of responsibilities that a team lead has. So we're going to walk through those three categories. The first category has to do with focusing on your people, specifically developing them and helping them to become better versions of themselves. Some of the descriptions included overseeing mentoring and personal development of those within your team, regular one-on-one conversations and executing on performance reviews, setting clear expectations for everyone on your team, and developing plans for team members to grow into a long-term role. So helping them along their way on their respective promotional track as well. Now, there are a wide variety of activities that you could participate in to try and help your people become better versions of themselves. But honestly, this is my personal opinion, as well as the opinion of most other management sources out there. The most effective medium or vehicle for instilling growth and meeting your people's needs is through one-on-one conversations. right? It's not having big training programs or doing things in groups or subgroups, or right? It's those one-on-one regular conversations that you have with your team members. That is how you are going to help develop them and focus on their needs. Now, why are one-on-ones this valuable and this important? Let me shoot a couple of reasons at you. There are reasons why one-on-ones are the most effective management tool that benefit the individual contributor from their perspective, and there are reasons why they're the most effective for you as the manager. In order to close the gap between where your individual contributor is and what they are capable of, you have to know each team member individually. Different people require different things from their manager. Some people are so self-motivated that you just need to help nudge them in the right direction and give that encouragement to just go, and they will do it and they'll close that gap. Other people have lots of insecurities about themselves, and they need quite a bit of coaching and individualized help along the way, right? You need to get to know your people individually in order to be able to help them on their individual growth tracks. So from the individual contributor's perspective, that's why it's super important to do personal development through one-on-ones. Now, from the manager's perspective, right, you are not being measured by your ability to do the work. You are measured by your team's ability to do the work. So inevitably, you are going to be delegating a lot of work to your team members. When it comes time to delegate and assign work to your team members, you can't expect to give any task to any worker like they came from the same cookie cutter factory. Everyone has their various strengths and weaknesses, and you as the manager need to know what those strengths and weaknesses are so that you can get the best results from the overall team. And that's especially true if you're looking to give people learning opportunities, right? Is this an appropriate time to take the risk and give this harder problem to the slightly less experienced person? Or are we in a time where I need to give this thing to the person who is strongest and most capable of handling this task right now? You can't know unless you've had one-on-one conversations with your people. So I want to give you a quick little framework. Your one-on-ones should always have an agenda to them, right? These are not necessarily, as this picture implies, I guess that means it's a bad picture. I'm sorry. You shouldn't just walk in and just open up casual conversation and then half hour comes up. Well, hey, that was a great talk. We'll talk to you later. I would go in with a very specific plan, right? The 10-10-10 organization. The first 10 minutes of your half hour weekly conversation with your individual contributors is for them. Technically speaking, the purpose of this meeting is for them. So don't talk about anything that's on your mind. Don't create an unconscious bias towards the things that you want to talk about. Let them talk about the things that are on the top of their mind. Because technically that's the most important thing to talk about right now, are the things that are top of mind for them. So give them those first 10 minutes to just talk about whatever they feel the need to talk to you about. Then the next 10 minutes are for you. And these are the points where you can ask for those updates on projects they're working on, to give feedback on things that you noticed during the past week, anything that you feel the need to communicate. And then the final 10 minutes are to talk about their future. So bring up the long-term goals that you have established with them at mid-year or at year end, and ask them, have you made any progress on these goals? Have you done anything to contribute towards them? And if not, that's all right. You know, these are weekly check-ins that you're doing, but it's a great opportunity to bring it up. Sometimes those first 10 minutes where they get to talk about whatever they want bleeds into 15 minutes. And then you have a lot of stuff that you need to talk about, and that ends up being 15 minutes, and bam, your half hour's over. That's okay, right? I don't always have to hit their future goal conversations every week, but aim to hit that 10-10-10 on average in your one-on-one conversations. These, when you go in with this intention to have a very specific and valuable individualized conversation with folks, it does wonders for them. I have a friend of mine who had a major job shift from moving from a teaching job to moving into a marketing job at an organization, at a company. And the quote that I pulled from her in hearing about her experience with that, she had a one-on-one with her manager. And she says that I walked into that room feeling like a phony. And you can understand why, right? Like, this is a big shift. Can you actually do it? I walked into that room feeling like a phony and walked out feeling like a professional. Can you imagine how much more effective and how much better of a worker she was because of that one-on-one conversation that she had with her manager? Right? That's a very powerful vehicle. So build your people. The next category of things in the team lead's job description have to do with systems, specifically systems that help the collective team work better together. This often has to do with building processes, right? Optimizing critical processes to increase availability and scalability, be an effective discussion leader, and ensuring the team processes are followed and effective, especially to ensure quality code deploys. Your processes should link back to your people. So you should be encouraging collaboration and stimulating creativity. You should foster a respectful workplace culture within the team. And as a team lead, you'll also be asked to assist with budgeting, hiring, compensation, planning, and resource allocation on the team. And resources both in terms of staffing your team with the right people, but also getting the right tooling in place so that your team can work better together. In my mind, the team lead takes on many different hats. One of the interesting hats to me is that you are considered a team designer as a software development manager. And if you think about the connotation of designer, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that designers do to increase the fidelity and the effectiveness of the thing that they are designing. Oftentimes, it's little details that make a huge difference, even though people might not notice them. But at the end of the day, all of the processes that you help put together for your team should follow the line of thinking in this quote. The manager's function is not to make people work, but to make it possible for people to work. I resonate so much with this quote. The more you make it possible for people to do their work, the more likely they will surprise you and they will do amazing things for you and for the company. So you have your people, you have your systems, and then you need a vision. Okay, the team lead is also responsible for driving the strategy of the team's projects. Some of the items have to do with contributing to design and architectural decisions and functioning effectively as a competent software development engineer. You are technically a role model for good coding practices. You're going to be helping to coach the people on your team to become better. And really, the best way to be able to do that is to be able to function as an individual contributor as well. So you are expected to be at least a decently competent software development engineer. You're asked to participate in agile planning meetings and to apply development strategies and implement the product roadmap. You're asked to make sure that the vision of your team is cohesive with the products and systems owned by your neighboring teams, by everyone in the division, right? It's having that forward thinking of the team. I kind of made a stretch on this background image here, but I think it illustrates the point I'm trying to drive with vision. In particular, there are things that threaten your team and your project's ability to produce value in the future. But technically speaking, there's nothing preventing your individual contributors from doing their work today. So they can totally ignore the impending issues for now and focus on today's problems. The team lead needs to pay attention to the environment your team is working in and the direction the projects are moving in to spot these big future problems and encourage the team to not ignore them when it's time to focus on them. The manager answers the question, what do I have to do today to solve, or better yet, avoid tomorrow's problem? You're very much steering that ship and keeping a lookout ahead of the team to make sure that we're going in a good direction. I was recently watching a movie again that I haven't seen in a while, and just happened to stumble on a great scene where a new manager is talking to his brand new team. And I feel like he demonstrated a great vision for the team as a part of this first interaction. I'm not going to play it to you. I'm just going to kind of talk the parts out because I want to point out some things along the way. But I think it's going to be a great example for us to follow. So the name of the movie is Ender's Game. Context of the movie, Ender is a boy here. He is in a military school, and they are preparing to have a big battle with an alien race. In the past, in this training school, they have this sort of scrimmage kind of game that they play against different military teams at this battle school. They had a particular team named Dragon Army who had never won a single scrimmage. And it was such a disappointment to the school that they retired the name. Well, here we are. We have Ender standing in front of his commander, and his commander tells him, we're going to bring back the Dragon Army, and you are going to be the manager of it. This team is going to be made up by, the actual quote is, misfits and oddballs that just might be brilliant with the right commander, and tells him that you will address them in 15 minutes. So we're going to go into the scene where Ender addresses his team and gives him that first kickoff message to everyone. Now, I'm going to flash some questions in front of you. And I want you to think of how you would answer these questions after we go through this scene. First, what did you like about how Ender handled this conversation? I'm going to bias you. I think he did it pretty well. So what did you like about it? But then more specifically, what was Ender's vision for the team? What was the vision? And then how would you rate his delivery of that vision? How did his cadets react to the vision? Would you expect the team to stay mostly the same after internalizing the vision that he shares? We'll see. As you think of answers to these questions, I want you to use the chat functionality as opposed to the Q&A functionality to go ahead and post some answers in there, and we'll highlight a couple of those as we spot them in the chat. So here we go. Ender walks in, sees everyone, calls attention, and he says, welcome to Dragon Army. Bunking will be arranged with youngest at the front and veterans at the back. One of his friends, Alai, chimes in and says, Ender, every other commander has their seniors closest to the door. He's kind of confused by this change of tradition. And Ender says, well, I don't intend to be like every other commander. At which point, Bernard chimes in. Now, Bernard's history, he teased Ender a lot and was pretty antagonistic to Ender. And it really comes out because point blank, he says, what am I doing here, Ender? You don't even like me. To which point Ender responds, I didn't select this army, Bernard, but I intend to make it the best in this school. I think you can help make that happen. Am I wrong? And then Bernard responds, no, sir. And then he addresses the whole team again. You will respect one another. If anybody has an idea they think is better than mine, I want to hear it. And then he smugly smiles at the scrappiest and next cleverest person in the room, his friend Bean. I can't be expected to do all of the thinking in this army, can I, Bean? And then Bean smugly looks at him, no, sir. And then Ender says, let's get suited up. Training starts now. And they give an enthusiastic, sir, yes, sir. and then out the room they go. And that's the end of the scene. So go ahead and pop in some answers to this question here. What did you like about how Ender handled that conversation as a manager? But then specifically, what was Ender's vision for the team? What would you say? Waiting on some responses still. Eric says, Ender expected contributions from all team members and did not expect to direct everything himself, right? That was a part of that vision. Jonathan says, work together in a respectful way to be successful. Definitely part of that vision. I like it. Inclusion was a big one. I agree. And it creates that respectful workplace that makes people feel safe to try new things, right? I want to point out too that, Ender had this idea that I really don't care where you come from. I don't care that you were a misfit or an oddball. He had this vision that the team can be the best in the entire school, right? He had that firm belief in it and he set that vision for it as well. Think about it. If his team internalized that vision and rallied behind, as you said, working together and rallying towards that kind of vision, would they stay the same or would they actually change and actually move towards that vision? Eric Francis, he acknowledged his deficiencies and encouraged the team to collaborate to overcome the challenges. I love it. Let's see. For time's sake, I need to move. Keep thinking about the answers to that, though. I think that we have a lot of good examples from Ender here. So that's pretty much the framework of being a manager, to focus on your people, to build systems that create that collaboration and inclusion, and then have a vision and drive the strategy of the projects that you're working on. So let's talk about your first 30 days. Let's say that you just got the job to be a brand new manager. What should you be doing in those first 30 days to hit the ground running? Very first thing, set up weekly 30-minute one-on-one meetings with every single individual on your team. Place it in everyone's calendars to do it. It is going to be by far the best vehicle for ramping you up on all of the things the team is doing, but also hitting the ground running on establishing that level of trust and that individualized two-way channel of communication with everyone. And then you flip into listening and learning mode. You need to get the background for each individual on your team. Where have they come from? What kind of strengths and weaknesses do they have? What's their future goals? Get the background on the team's projects and past performance. What are the things that they're working on? What kind of problems has it had historically? What kinds of controls and development life cycle are in place for it today? And learn about the existing systems that the team is using. The one thing you don't want to do is bust down the door, come on in and say, this is the way that good teams work, and then make all kinds of changes according to this important book that you read or this other mentor that you're working with or this and that kind of thing. That is a surefire way to engender mistrust on your team. And a lot of times, a surefire way to get blindsided by things that you didn't expect. Sometimes things are in place that seem inefficient for very specific reasons. And if you don't take the time to learn about what is in place and why it's there, you might misjudge I might make the wrong call to change something that probably actually should stay the same. So flip into listening and learning mode for those first 30 days and attempt to keep more or less a status quo. But during that time, right, this is not necessarily a time to kick back and relax and watch the show, right? This is very proactive listening and learning that I'm aiming for, because you are gearing up and preparing for the big team improvements and the vision setting that you're going to do as those 30 days expire. And that's pretty much it, guys. We're about at our time. So closing up shop here, we're going to recap. Managers versus individual contributors. A lot of us have that experience as individual contributors. We were students at school. We did our individual task, our homework, and we turned it in, and we were graded on our individual performance. As a manager, the game changes. It's very much a group game where you are judged based on the performance of everyone else in the group. In order to be able to handle that change, lean on this framework of your job responsibilities. Focus on your people. Do those one-on-ones. Set up your systems and have a vision for the team. And I can promise you that you'll be well on your way to becoming a very effective manager. Now, much like a terrible college professor, I'm giving you a lab assignment to go learn about all of the topics that we're going to cover in the next lecture, quote unquote. This is just sort of a teaser of what kinds of topics we haven't gotten to yet that are essential to being a good manager. We can talk about communication essentials, delivering good feedback, as well as how to be a great written communicator, establishing influence among your neighbors, as well as taking a deeper dive into the people aspect. What sorts of things should you do about the low performers on your team? How do you leverage and not lose your highest performers on your team? And then what can you do to understand the work styles of different people on the team and how to work with those different types of folks and their preferences? Um, as you can see, that management opens up a big door of learning opportunity to become extremely effective at delivering results from your neck of the woods. Here's where you can study answers to those questions. I recommend these books, High Output Management, as well as Peopleware. These have been excellent resources for me. Manager Tools is an awesome podcast that also has an accompanying website full of free resources to be able to learn how to be a better manager. There's also plenty of online courses on how to do management and being a leader of a team. And so I encourage you to go check out all of those things. With that, though, that's the end of my comments for today. We'll go ahead and take your questions for the next few minutes.
All right, so thanks everyone for joining us. If there are no more questions, I'd just like to toss the link to the survey for session 3 into the chat room. If you can fill out that survey, it does help with us in preparing for DevCon each year. Getting some feedback is always welcome.
There we go.
Has everyone had a chance to click on the link before we end the session? Doesn't look like we have any questions, Jeff.
That's all right.
You did a good job.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. We'll end the session now. Thank you all for attending.
Yep, sounds good.